Hello, everyone. Welcome to CampusLink. This is Rodrigo, and today we have the second special episode in occasion of the Black History Month. With me is the co-host Alexis. Alexis is gonna be introducing some very special guests that we have today. And yes, Alexis, how are you doing? And can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Rodrigo, first of all, for the platform to be able to talk about the Black History Month. I'm Alexis, the founder of the Black and African Diaspora. I'm also the head of the education of the Student Faculty Council of the Faculty of Science, and I'm also a third year computer science student. I'm here today with some special guests, and I'll just let them introduce themselves.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is VUCampusradio.nl. I'm a third year history and international studies student. I'm hopefully graduating in July. And yeah, I've been at the VU since around 2020. So
Great.
Gabriel, third year AI student here at the VU, hopefully also to graduate this July.
Yes, thank you so much for introducing yourselves. Today, we'll continue from the previous podcast. We're still talking about the Black History Month. And on the previous episode, we had a guest called Maliki, and he introduced what Black History Month meant to him. And I would also like to ask you the same thing. When you hear of Black History Month, what comes to mind?
I feel like as both a Black person and a history student, I feel like this is a very relevant. I feel like Black History Month, I was researching it recently and I saw that in some places it's called not just Black History Month, but Black Achievement Month. And I think that's a really good way to look at it as well, is to remember both how Black people and racism have been treated in the past and how we got to where we are today, but also Black Achievement Month in like how far we've come, how much farther we are going and plans for the future. So yeah, that's what it means to me personally.
I want to add that Black History Month is also a celebration of the little footnotes in history, the people you don't talk about in history class, the people who your teachers don't even know their names, celebrating them and giving them the spotlight, making people know that these people also did great things and they meant a lot to the Black culture, to the Black community as well.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of you because for me, this month, I think of action because for me, this is the time to take action and continue to advocate for us. So the minorities, Black people, who we know are often put to the margins. And I agree that we should not forget our ancestors and what they did for us, both the famous and infamous people. But we also should not forget the present, what is going on right now. I think, Voke, you mentioned achievement. We should also acknowledge what people are doing right now, what Black people are achieving right now. And I think it's important to commemorate the past, but also think about the present. And yeah, we're all students here, and I would like to ask you how each of you celebrate the Black History
But
Month.
how I personally celebrate Black History Month is, for me, right now I'm reading a lot of books. So every year to read a lot of books. And this month I'm reading only books either by Black authors or with Black main characters, that kind of thing. I'm actually currently reading a book called Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. It's quite interesting so far. It really deals with ideals of white privilege, and it's just really cathartic to be reading that kind of book because I feel like it focuses on a lot of things that I feel innately as a Black person experiencing the world, but this book gives me the way to express some of those thoughts in a more cohesive way. I recommend the book. It's very good so far.
That's pretty cool. I might pick it up. Personally, I don't celebrate Black History Month. And that's the point being that every month, every day is to me Black History Day. I live my life with my culture. I am Black and I'm proud of that. And everything I do, I do it with that thought in mind. In my line of work as well, I work as a freelancer in film organizations where we organize talks and classes. And whenever that issue pops up or
Yeah.
the talk about racism or about Black creators or Black people in the film industry, I'm always vocal. I'm willing to start a conversation. That is to me celebrating Black history and always being there to let people know about what has happened, what will happen, and what is going on within our community and things that are looked down upon or not given the spotlight, at least making sure that people know of that.
Yes, thank you, Gabe. That was great because I agree with you that Black history, Black people should be celebrated every day. We shouldn't wait for this month to celebrate. Me personally, this month I feel special because this is something that is worldwide. And yeah, what I'm doing this month is I try to really purchase stuff from Black-owned business. So we know that as students, sometimes we're on low budget, but it doesn't have to be something new. It's just something that I normally would purchase or I need, but I will be intentional about making sure that it's from a Black-owned business. Another thing that I'm also doing, from the Black and African Diaspora, both of you are also members. I thought it was really important to organize activities that we've been doing since the beginning of February. So we're doing like 2 or 3 activities every week. in order to bring ourselves together, because the Black community is also about communion, and it's good that we come together and remind ourselves of who we are and also have fun together, right? Students, we also want to have fun besides coming to campus and studying. Yeah, I think this is really important, and I agree with you again that it should be every day. But personally, me this month, I feel very special to be a Black person. I can run on campus and scream that I'm Black during this month. Yeah, and also talking about freedom and running on campus, like sometimes we may be in situations where we feel ashamed or we feel like being Black is not really the best thing that happened to us that we were giving birth to. So I was wondering, have you ever had such an experience or been in a situation when you felt ashamed? For example, there's a girl who told me that she cannot wear her natural hair to work because it is unprofessional, and has also been taught. Even when I saw a video online of some kids in an African country, they did not like the skin color. They were begging their parents to buy them bleaching lotions so that they would become clearer of the skin. So yeah, like these are things that are actually happening. I'd like to know if you've ever had such an experience or if you even know someone who has had one.
From my point of view, I think I was brought up to be proud of who I am, especially coming from my background and my family. So there wasn't really a point to where I've been ashamed to be Black. But I have had quite a lot of incidences, a lot of times in my life where I have limited myself to what I can show people and how I can be out there. Because when I moved to the Netherlands, I went to a school with, let's say, a 99% population of white kids, right? And no matter how much you try to get to know them or how much you try to show them who you are, they're never going to accept that because their positionality is in a way that they can't relate to you as a Black person, especially you as a Black migrant. So I didn't show them everything. I limited myself to only showing them the things that they're familiar with and the things that will get me out of trouble and keep me in a safe position. And I think when I was done with high school, I realized that's not really the way I want to go. So like from then when I started studying, everywhere I go, everything I do it with my culture, I do it with who I am 100% all the time. But apart from that, there are a lot of situations where I feel saddened to be Black, like where I get into contact with someone and it makes me sad for being in that space. I spent 2 years living at Alexis, and within those 2 years, there wasn't a single white person that I actually became friends with, except for my housemate who I was with pretty much every day of the week. But like at parties, at any gathering, like when people are outside, when you meet people, you can talk to them. That's fair. But whenever the conversation is over, you never have the feeling like, oh, I've made a bond with this person. There is a huge wall between the two of us. And it got so bad that at some point I just stopped talking to people because every conversation is very superficial. It's like the same thing. And me being an introvert, I'm not going to start a conversation in the first place, right? It got to a point where it's just sad to talk to people because no matter what, that your roommate, after saying one word to them, is going to become best friends. They're going to come back to his place to hang out. But no matter what I do, it's just me and me alone.
Yeah.
And another case is I have to go like to Zandam a lot every 3 weeks to get a medical checkup. And every single time I come across like an old woman or an old couple and we're walking on the same side of the road, they either move to the next side or they move all the way to the edge so they don't come into contact with me.
Yeah.
And every time I see that, it's very saddening because I'm not a threat to you. I think you are more of a threat to me than I am to you because if I make a wrong step and you call the police, I'm in trouble. But it always happens every single time I've been there since September. Every single time I come across an older white couple, it happens. An older woman, sometimes they clutch their bag. I see I'm trying to rip it out of their hands. And yeah, it keeps happening. I hope we get to a point where in the next few years, people learn, okay, Black people aren't a threat. They are also going about their day. They're minding their business. They have work to do. We should stop acting like that. With all those situations, I feel like a huge sense of sadness because it keeps happening. It always happens. And literally the very moment I step from the street and I see a person, I have to be careful. I have to either walk on the other side already or be very cautious, put a big smile on my face so I don't come across as a threat. And I want to go about my day like how I go about my day. If I'm sad, let me frown. If I'm angry, let me frown and then just walk past without any incident. As a compliment to that story, I came across an Arabic couple. And at that day, I was feeling pretty sad. So I had a pretty gloomy face and the man started laughing. Like he
Oh
started
no.
laughing at me, and I smiled back at him. It's like, "Goed zo." And
Oh.
the wife also smiled, and then I said hi, and then I kept walking. That's the sense of interaction I want to have with strangers when I walk by them, not the sense of, "Oh my God, am I doing something wrong?" or "Why is this person afraid of me for being there?"
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you so much, Gabe, for sharing, because that's your own experience that you've actually gone through and maybe sadly also still going through right now. And I'd like to ask you, okay, what do you think about this? Or also, have you also been in such a
Mm.
situation?
I was gonna say, I was like, I don't know if you could see, but I was like nodding a lot to a lot of what Gabe was saying, because it's not a case of me being ashamed of. I refuse to be ashamed of my race, but that's something that I had to unlearn. Especially me, I moved from Nigeria to the Netherlands when I was around 10 or 11, and kids can be mean. And I moved to predominantly school, so there was a lot of other white people. It wasn't an international school, so that's good. There was other black people as well, other non-white people, but it was predominantly whites. And almost all of my teachers for the entire 7 years I was at that school, I think I had maybe 3 teachers that weren't white. This was a very white school. And there were just so many things that I had to, as a child moving from Nigeria, for example, I had a Nigerian accent. I had a name that is 2 syllables, but very difficult to pronounce apparently. And I was just okay with, I had to change a lot of myself. Like the way I speak now, it wasn't an accident. It was very deliberate from like a 10-year-old me thinking like I stand out if I'm talking with my Nigerian accent. Let me talk with a more British one, a more international one. And now I feel sad I don't have my Nigerian accent anymore. It's a part of my culture that I wish I still had. And also going to that school as well. Shout out to anyone from that school is watching, but it was so difficult for people to say the name VUCA. So they'd be like, oh, can I call you Voki? Can I call you Voki? Can I call you blah, blah, blah? And I'd be like, yeah, sure, that's fine. I know it's a difficult name, blah, blah, blah. And again, Gabe, when you were like, as soon as I graduated, I was like, I'm done with that. The name is 2 syllables. Learn it, right? I understand if you don't get it the first time. I understand if you first read it and you think it's Vogue. Just ask me. I will tell you as many times as you need to. Take your time. Just please say my name right, because it's something that I'm proud of. It has like a meaning in my parents' language. So it's something that I'm proud of, because I refuse to be ashamed of my race anymore. I refuse to be ashamed of being a black woman. I refuse to be ashamed of being black, being African, being Nigerian. But as you said, I am saddened by my race sometimes, because again, we live in a predominantly white institution, a predominantly white country. So there's times where you definitely feel isolated, or you just feel put to the side a little bit. And it's difficult to put it into words to people who don't feel the same way, which is another thing you read in like why I'm no longer talking to white people about race. There's a lot of internalized racism that I have unlearned since I was a 10-year-old coming to the Netherlands for the first time. There's a lot more that I probably still need to unlearn, but I'm excited for the journey.
Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing, because we can see through your different experiences and stories that your blackness is really influencing your day-to-day life and even your life on campus. For instance, the way that my blackness influences my life or even my experience at the VU is like, I think it really shapes the lens through which I see life. So, of course, because I'm black, I'll be more sensitive to some comments, or I will be more likely to look at details and pick certain things that maybe a non-black person will not be able to see or to pick or to understand. So for instance, there was a time in my WhatsApp group chat, computer science WhatsApp group chat, where someone made a comment, and I was very sensitive to it, because I am black, I'm also African, and it was about a black African. So it was really, for me, it was a very racist comment. And I have never spoken in my group chat. And this was the only time I ever wrote in my group chat. And I said, hey, this comment is racist, okay? And of course, this was made by a white person. He didn't understand why it was racist. He became defensive, proud. He started insulting me because, these people, sometimes they don't understand that there is a very thin line between making a joke and actually being racist. I don't know if he understood that it was actually racist and he was just trying to cover it by insulting me, or really maybe it was really out of ignorance, because of course maybe sometimes it's not the intention, but it doesn't mean that it would not cause some damage. Like even the view, sometimes I have had experiences with some teachers who have even been racist towards me, and have refused to answer my question, or have frowned at me but go and laugh with the other, or even refused to answer my question but laugh with the other people. Sometimes I also wonder if my skin color were different, would these things also still happen to me or not?
I just want to say on that, also the courage it takes to be able to speak up in those kind of situations, because if we're talking intersectionality for a second, you're not just black, you're a black woman. So if you say anything about, okay, that was racist, suddenly it's like the black female stereotype of being aggressive or all of that kind of thing. So it's like something that you really need to take into account. And it's something that I've seen that I really hope and I believe, and I think that we're living in a post-George Floyd situation. I feel like the summer of 2020, there was a lot of discourse going on about like how to be actively anti-racist in a racist society. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me is that you don't have to be a racist to be racist, right? Like there's a lot of white people who would say racist things or have racist thoughts and things, but you'd call them out and they'd be like, oh, but I'm not racist. Oh, but that wasn't my intention. All that kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, great. But you still said something racist. And I'm hoping that more people are moving towards that thing because, again, it's something that we all have to unlearn. We live in a racist society. So sometimes if we have racist ideas or we have racist stereotypes in our heads or we act in a racist way, it doesn't mean that you did it intentionally. It doesn't mean that you meant to do it. It doesn't mean that you had that intention to hurt someone or to be racist. But that doesn't change the fact that what you said or what you did was still racist. And that's something you have to actively unlearn rather than just like accepting it as, oh, but I didn't mean it that way, therefore it's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely see what you mean.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying about unlearning because the fun fact with this story that I just shared is that there were other Black people in that group, right? Even Black and African group. And the funny thing is some people of his friend group who were also Black, so 2 Black people were on his side and were saying that joke and that there's no need for me to take this out of proportion. But it was really funny to me because, of course, I did not expect any Black person to support me. But I just thought they will keep their mouth shut. Why would you talk and say something that doesn't make sense? In the group chat of more than 300 students, only one Black South African guy wrote to me privately and said, hey, just calm down. There's no need to take this too far. These people are proud. They will never acknowledge their mistakes. So yeah, and even in the group chat, he said, I can completely understand Alexis' point of view because I relate to that. I'm also African. And then one of the other guys was like, I'm also African. I told him, if you're African, you're Black and there's nothing wrong with this comment, then sorry, but you should be ashamed of yourself. And he didn't know what else to say. So that's where it ended. But yeah, these are things that influence us. And even when we see on campus, we often hear about diversity and inclusion, especially at the VU. And I'd like to ask you, do you think that there is enough that's actually being done right now to let the Black voices be heard here on campus?
No. I'm going to be very blunt about that. And in my opinion, it's a big no. First of all, I think when we talk about diversity and inclusion or diversity and inclusivity, to me, one key word is being left out, and that is positionality. Right? Like to add to Alexis' story, right, with the 2 Black guys who were against you in the group chat, I can understand their point of view because let's say where they came from, their social background, the people they get in contact with, all those things influences how they see the world, right? And if you see the world in a specific way and you feel like, okay, this comment that guy made, I find it very racist and he should apologize for it or at least understand that his words have an implication on someone else. Someone also can look at it and go, okay, from my field of view, from how I experience the world, I don't view this as a racist comment. And thus the guy is in the right to ignore your request to apologize. That is what it's about. It's not really them coming to his defense. It's them refusing to accept your perspective, to shift into your positionality and view the world from your point of view. Back to the whole diversity and inclusion thing, you can have a poster with 5 Black people in the front page and 4 white people at the back, but that doesn't mean that the uni or that the organization is being inclusive. You can have a correct mix, like a 50-50 mix of Dutch students and 50 international students, but that doesn't mean that the international students have a place to live, a place to stay, and somewhere to be comfortable at. You can have a board of directors with 10 men and 1 woman, but that doesn't mean that 1 woman's opinion is heard. To me, inclusivity and diversity is to understand someone else's positionality, to understand where someone is coming from, to understand what someone has to say, and to accept that as a fact to them, to accept that their input is valid, not only to hear them out, but to actually do something with it. If you complain about, let's say, Proctorio being racist against Black people, it shouldn't be dismissed as an algorithmic error. You should be heard, and there should be things done to make it better. That is, to me, what inclusivity is about. Not just listening to them, not just giving them a platform to talk, but actually doing something with what they have to say. And understanding that what they have to say, even though it's not what you experience personally, it has a room to be said. And it has a room to be acted on. That is how I see it.
Yes, that's really great, Gabe. I really like what you said because, of course, it's easy to just paint everything either white or Black, but it doesn't mean that there's actually a thought given to it. It doesn't actually mean that they care. And yeah, but also I think before even caring or trying to hide these facts or try to put a label on this, like I think action should be taken because even when you were talking about, okay, putting 1 Black one Black woman in the midst of 10 other white men is still not being done. That's the first problem. Because, for instance, I have been here at the VU for 3 years, and it's only last week that I met a female Black professor. I have never, ever met a Black professor talk less of being female at this institution. So the thing is, of course, it doesn't suffice to only cover it up, but you should actually care about it. But even the covering up, I don't see at this university. So what do you think about this, VUCA?
For me, yeah, understand. Like when you said that, I was thinking like, have I met any Black professors at this uni?
No, I
And
haven't.
I don't think I have, and that's something else to be said. But when we're talking about diversity and inclusion, Alexis, you're in the student council this year. I was in the student council last year. One of the things that I wanted to do when we were making our like plan for the year, I put in, this goes without saying that I was the only Black person on the council of 6 of us. And I put in that I wanted to create basically the Black and African Diaspora group. I wanted to create a society for Black students that went like around the university, or at least start with my faculty. And I tried to put that into our year plan, and it was, I wouldn't say shut down because I understand the reasons why it was made, but they said that this is something that needs to come from the students themselves, and that I can't do it from like a top down, like from the faculty student council kind of thing and starting it. And I was really bummed out about that actually. And it was like the next week or something that you came up to me randomly and you were like, hey, you're Black. Do you want to join this group that I'm making? And like, it literally took the initiative from you to take that. But that's the thing that we're seeing, that it didn't come from the university level or even the faculty level. It had to come from the students. So when we talk about diversity and inclusion, like even last year when I was in the student council, I couldn't do something to start like a Black and African group. And also I didn't hear much about events or things that the university was doing to help Black and diversity and all of those kinds of issues, because I think my excuse this year is that I'm not in the student council. I'm not hearing every single announcement that's being made. But even last year, I was hearing all the announcements. I was most of the time making the announcements, and none of these announcements were ever about race or diversity and inclusion and all those kinds of things. So it just doesn't seem like it's too much of a priority as the university as a whole, or even as my own faculty, the Faculty of Humanities.
Thank you so much, VUCA, for sharing, because we're talking about practicality. And I was thinking, like, what do you guys think practically could be done at the VU to this experience or make it better for Black students? So, for instance, I think, first of all, intention matters, of course. They try to look into getting even more Black professors at this university. I don't think that they are unqualified. I'm not saying that if they're unqualified, we should just take them because they're Black, but they should also be intentional about trying to find these other people who may have something to say or something valuable to add to the VU. I think they should be intentional about that. Also, secondly, like for instance, in the Faculty of Science, we have study associations. I think study associations also in other faculties. I am in STORM, and I always receive notifications about guest lecturers or experts in the field coming to review your CV or coming to give a talk. But I've never seen a Black professional being invited to give a talk or even a lecture about Black history or just to talk about your field. So I think also on the central level, this could be changed, but even at the level of study associations, they could also do something. I think we also have a role to play. Unfortunately, we cannot just cross our arms and expect that this university is going to take action. I think we should try to boost them and also try to make our own initiatives. So what do you guys think? How can we achieve this practically on campus?
In terms of the study associations, as you said, I think there could be moves being made to actively make sure we're inviting professors of different backgrounds, right? So this is about Black History Month, so specifically Black professors or professors of color in general, but knowing the value of having different perspectives, of giving different lectures, or being able to have different events and things like that. Having historical, like I'm from the history department, so having like historical excursions to museums, or just like focusing on issues that don't get talked about much in whatever study that we're doing and everything. I think that's just the first step, is just like actually putting, as you said, intention, actually like trying something with it. But yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that front. And to add to it, I think there has to be a move made from the university itself that prioritizes having different perspectives or having a mix of people, because what you see normally at a university is a lot of male white professors, a few female professors, and the people of color is just a small minority, right? But at every single university, you have quite a lot of people of colors who are doing PhDs. So that means within their experience of studying, something happens that makes them not want to continue at the university and go off to pursue something else. The university has to intentionally put in effort to keep these people here who have experienced the university itself, who knows how to how it feels like to be a student here, and let them build up the university into a place where everyone feels welcome, where everyone is heard, and where you can have all these different perspectives in the same faculty, bringing up a new generation of people.
Yeah.
So that is what I feel the uni can do to move that perspective higher. From student to student basis, I think communication, let's talk to each other. It's not only about, oh my God, how did the assignment go? Oh, how did that go? And do you want to party this weekend? It should be a conversation with each other on each other's shortcomings, right? What people are doing well, what people are not doing well. To also come back to the thing that happened in your group chat, a similar thing happened in mine where when the whole Ukraine war started, right? When people were evacuating the country, and a girl posted in the group chat that Black people are being prevented from crossing over to Poland. And one guy, without fact checking anything, just opened up and screamed, "This is fake news." And people came to his defense. And there was a Surinamese guy who replied to it like, why does Black people always get butthurt about everything? And to me, I was like, dude, chill. First of all, someone pointed something out. It's up to us to have a conversation. Okay, is this really happening? Is this fake news? Are people trying to get attention for things that do not exist, for issues that are not relevant? But instead of attacking someone for sharing something, maybe look for an article, try to find out what is going on instead of immediately dismissing this as it's not relevant.
Yeah.
So we need to have a conversation with each other. We need to get through this together as a uni, not just individually, but with everyone of all ethnicities, of all backgrounds. We need to have a dialogue, and that doesn't really happen here.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying, Gabe, about having a safe space at the university, because I also think that on a central level, it should be intentional about having a safe space. So I also think that they can encourage, for instance, the Black and African diaspora. They can give us a support, because this is a good initiative as you're talking about us being an individual, but also coming into communion. The Black and African diaspora is also there to bring people together, but we should not forget that we're also individual people, right? So
That's
if we're
true.
going through something, or we're feeling bad, or we have issues, mental health issues as well, it will affect our input and our output on the university, and this will also influence the university's results, and also influence the university's reputation. So I'd like to ask you, like, what do you think are the main factors that play a role in increasing the stigma on mental health care in the Black community?
For me personally, I think that one of the bigger issues is not to do with just the Black community, but with the immigrant community as a whole. If we think back on it, colonialism was not too long ago. My grandmother was born into a British colony. My father was born only a few years after Nigeria gained independence. So we look at these generations that came before us and look at the struggles that they had to deal with, and the mentality of then was just carry on, just move on. And a lot of us are here. I know that I'm here because my parents worked really hard to make sure that their kids could have a bright future and everything. They had to work hard. They had to go through struggles. They had to beat down door after door just so I could have a comfortable, good, happy life. And here I am living that privileged, happy life. And then it feels like a betrayal to all they worked for me to then turn around and say, hey, I'm depressed, or I have anxiety, or I'm struggling with my mental health, and all of those things, because it seems and it is that they have gone through so much to get us here. And the fact that like we're still struggling, or even though we have had easier lives than they did most of the time, because they worked hard to make sure that we could have easier lives. And then it seems that we're struggling in ways that they didn't. And I think that's where part of the stigma comes from. I think part of it could also be hand in hand with the fact that a lot of immigrant communities are also very religious communities. I am Christian, and there's a stigma in Christianity. I can speak for Christianity that there's a stigma usually that if you have a problem with your mental health, just pray about it and then it should go away. So that's sweeping it under the rug and just like pretending it doesn't exist. And I do pray about my mental health, obviously, but that doesn't mean that it just doesn't exist, right? If I prayed about a broken leg, doesn't mean that my leg is no longer broken. It's still something very important. It's something I feel very strongly about. And I've seen in my church, at least, and like in some of my Christian friend communities, that like this is at least changing, at least with this generation, that we're able to recognize both sides, that it's possible to have mental health issues, and yes, it's possible to have all this while also being a Christian, while also having a relatively privileged life compared to the ones that our parents had and everything. I think like those are the two main factors, I think, in my personal opinion.
I think I agree with you on all fronts, actually. To add to it, one thing about prayer that I noticed from me combating mental health illnesses and my mom being in the same position is my mom wasn't really brought up to talk about these things.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, coming from a Ghanaian background, at least from my point of view, being a Ghanaian in Ghana, like whenever my grandma is struggling with something, she will tell me, but she'll never tell my mom. Why? Because she doesn't want her children to feel
Yeah.
unsafe or to feel that they are a burden to her. So she has a problem communicating her feelings or her struggles to my mom, who will immediately go into, oh, how can I help you and make you better? How can I make you feel better? So she comes to me like a 7-year-old and talks about all these things that
Yeah.
are going on and how much she misses my grandfather. And I feel the same way from my mom, or I see the same thing in my mom. She never actively talks to me or my little sister about her mental health or about what was going on. She had a pretty bad divorce a few years ago, and since then she opens up a bit more to me about these things because she doesn't really have anyone else to talk to. But what something she can always rely on is prayer. Like every time we pray, she says everything that is going on in her life, at least to God. Okay, this happened, that happened, that's why I'm feeling like this, all of those things. And to me, I think that's a very big step in actually dealing with mental health, that you can talk about it openly. Even though there is no one to listen, you have a feeling like, okay, there is this greater being up there who hears my struggles and who's trying his best to make me feel better. And from then on, like, she can move on forward with her life. Like, she has never been to therapy. I have, and I still feel like we are in the same phase with our progress in mental health. So I think prayer helps in at least getting it out there and not making it weigh on you the whole time. But to come back to the actual question about the stigma, I think there was a photographer slash videographer who made a photo series about like black men and mental health, and his research is mostly like barbershops, like are for black men a very safe space to be, because you have to be there for an hour, for 30 minutes. And within that 30 minutes, you have a person to chit chat with. That doesn't really have an influence on your family matters. That doesn't really know what you have to do at home, but someone you can tell your problems to and someone that can give you advice if you need to. So for a lot of black men in the African community, or especially here in Europe, they always have a place to be, like where they can talk to other people or where they can be a bit emotional about what they're going through or what's happening around them. And that's something I find very inspiring. And I want to be more normalized, not only to a barber, but to a friend or to someone who wouldn't push you down. I've seen quite a lot of cases online where someone goes, oh my God, I broke up with my boyfriend because I wanted him to be vulnerable. Since he became vulnerable, I don't feel like he is my protector anymore. Right? So lots of men are also afraid to open up to their significant others, but they still have friends. It's not always about the partying. It's not always about going out. It's not always about fun, but you should be there for each other, right? You should have a space within your friend group, within your own community, where you don't feel like you don't matter, or the things you're going through is just bitching, because there are people who have been through worse, but you should be safe, or you should feel free to talk about it.
Thanks for sharing, Gabe, because also talking about black men, for instance, I have a friend whose friend group is mostly made up of non-black people, so basically white guys. And yeah, he told me about the double discrimination because, first of all, you're black and you're coming out again as someone who has mental issues. So sometimes it could also play a factor because of your skin color. And I also think that with the factors that influence stigma or that increase the stigma, is like what you were saying, Voke, about parents who have worked hard. Like me personally, I cannot wake up one day and tell my dad, hey, I'm feeling depressed, because I'm scared that he would think that I'm here wasting his money, because because sometimes it's also the mentality, right? Because I have African parents and their mentality is that as long as you have a roof above your head, as long as you have water to drink, you have food to eat, and you're going to school, you're living the best of both worlds, right? Everything is right. There's nothing else wrong. So to come up and start talking about depression or anxiety or nervousness and so on, sometimes it could also feel like disappointing them, which is not what you're trying to do, right? Sometimes I think as my parents, as the first people I should be able to go to, even before going to a friend or a partner, I think my parents, for me, are the people I should go to first. And I cannot do that in those cases because I'm scared of disappointing them, or literally they would think that I'm wasting their money, because I also have a friend who told me, hey, I'm going to therapy, but my parents are not aware of this. Because Then if he tells his parents, they'll tell him, I'm sending you money to go to school and you're using my money to pay for a term. Also, sometimes I think a main factor is really the mentality. And I think parents, not only parents, but even we as individuals who try to educate ourselves on this issue and really be more open, even if sometimes we might not understand why it is the case, but be more open and be more willing to lend a listening ear, because sometimes someone just wants you to listen. They
That's
don't
true.
expect you to solve all their problems in one day or to even solve any of them. But sometimes it's just too much to carry and you just want to talk it out with someone that you think will be able to relate and empathize with you. Right? Yeah. So I think those are some of the things I think really impact the mental health aspect within the Black community. And I was thinking, like, how do you think the stigma can maybe be reduced or perhaps even broken in the Black community?
From my point of view, I think there is always this fear of talking to your parents about it. I've had it for the majority of my life. My mom knows what I've been going through, of what I went through, but she had this fear of confronting me with it. So it was up to me to confront her with it. So the first time I decided, okay, mom, I'm feeling really depressed. I want you to know what I'm feeling. Like, she sat there, couldn't say anything because she had no idea how to respond, because she had never had the experience with any family member coming to her and saying, okay, I'm feeling bad and these are all the things that are weighing me down. You don't need to solve them for me, but I want you to know that this is what is going on in my life. And from then on, I think I feel safer talking to my mom about these things. It's a risk you need to take. I think it's a risk that doesn't always pay off. In my situation, thankfully it did. But that's one approach to it. And to me, something that we ignore, especially in the Black community, is we don't want to feel vulnerable. We're going through so much. We have all these pressures coming from all angles that we don't want someone to know that we are vulnerable. We don't want anyone to know that we have a weakness. But even if you don't want people to know, you can internalize it. Sit down, breathe, think to yourself. When you're angry, ask yourself, why am I angry? Mindfulness, practice mindfulness. Take a moment for yourself to actually think through your thoughts, think through what you're going through, and then make sure that you're okay with yourself, that you're proud of what you're doing, and be good to yourself. It's the first step in getting over all of this. And just don't be afraid to share it. At least, no matter the situation you're in, there is that one person that will listen to you talk about whatever for hours and hours on end. Find that person and
Yeah.
talk to them. You don't need them to solve your problem for you, but at least being able to communicate with someone is a very huge step.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, something we can do to at least minimize the mental pressure and the mental health problems that we deal with in the Black community.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gabe, for that advice, because you also gave some advice to Black youths in the community, in the VU, or even in the world. And what do you think about VUCA? Anything to add?
In terms of reducing stigma, I think the number one way to reduce stigma is with education and with people being willing to learn or being willing to unlearn things that they thought they knew about mental health, because it really is a spectrum. It can change. It's a very important thing that affects a lot of youth today, so especially a lot of Black youth, a lot of people in minority groups and everything. So I think just like having that open mind to understand things and maybe unlearn some things that we thought we knew about mental health in general, about anxiety, depression, the lesser talked about mental health issues as well. And then in terms of advice for help, I think Gabe said pretty much everything. Just find your safe space, find your community, know that you're not alone, even if it feels like it. There's plenty of people out there that are going through exactly the same thing as you are. Don't be scared to lean on your friends, lean on your family, lean on your found family, lean on people who care about you, because they do care about you. Just being vulnerable and being happy to lean on other people. Yeah, I think that's like the number one thing I would say.
Yeah, I agree with you. And also, if you're at the VU, feel free to join the Black and African Diaspora. We're also trying to create the safe space that you guys have been mentioning since the beginning for students like us, Black or African. So feel free to join us. And thank you so much, Rodrigo, for the platform.
Thank you so much, all of you. It was a very inspiring talk. And I hope we have some decision makers at the VU listening to see if we can implement some of these ideas that were discussed today.
Thanks so much.